Hello friends, welcome back, and today we're going over my third video, I think, featuring footage of the Edge of Fate that I was allowed to record during a recent trip to Bungie. Today I thought it might be a good idea to go over a bunch of things under the overall umbrella of how gear will be changing in Edge of Fate. I'm gonna try not to go too overboard, but some things we'll touch on today. Tier 5 gear, both weapons and armor. Armor 3.0, how you can earn high-level gear, and how this will affect your current gear overall. AKA, will my entire vault of god roll weapons and or armor become trash in Edge of Fate, which will be an interesting discussion. More on that later. Why don't we start with weapons? In Edge of Fate, Bungie is introducing a new weapon tier system. You've probably heard the term tier 5 weapon thrown around a lot in a few Bungie dev streams and or articles. But what does that really mean, and how does that differ from a regular weapon? Why don't we go through each tier? This is a tier 1 weapon. Translation, a regular basic ass legendary weapon. Looks like any other legendary you might have clogging up your postmaster from God knows what activity. Here we have a tier 2 weapon. It has the same number of weapon perks available as tier 1, but you'll notice that the perks in column 3 and 4 are now both enhanced. This is a tier 3 weapon. Not only are the weapon perks in column 3 and 4 enhanced, but you'll notice that we now have double perks in column 3 and 4. Very nice. Here we have a tier 4 weapon. We still have double perks in columns 3 and 4, but now every perk is enhanced, including the barrel options in column 1 and the mag/battery options in column 2, which is kind of wild. Also, starting at tier 4, all of your weapon mods that you can equip on the gun will also be enhanced. And finally, this is a tier 5 weapon. We now have triple perk options in column 3 and 4, not to mention every column 1 and column 2 option is enhanced, but now our origin traits are enhanced as well. Like tier 4 weapons, all your weapon mod options are also auto enhanced. On top of that, you'll notice that our gun has a trippy cosmic blue visual effect. All tier 5 weapons will allow you to manually turn on this glow if you so desire. You'll also be able to turn on a combat flare option, aka some wacky visual flare that happens when you defeat an enemy. This is in a cosmetic slot, so it doesn't have to compete with actual weapon mods the way that Sweaty Confetti used to. Sweaty Confetti is another flare option you can turn on your tier 5 weapon, by the way. In short, tier 1 weapons are very plain Jane, and tier 5 weapons have way more options, visual flare, and are oozing with enhancement upgrades every which way. That being said though, don't think that you have to have every weapon in the game as a tier 5 option, and your gear will be subpar at lower tiers if you don't grind out high tier weapons. Tier 5 weapons are definitely the best, but I would be perfectly fine with a tier 3 weapon if it had the right role. Tier 4 and tier 5 weapons are for people who really want to min-max and show off their visual flair. What about tier 5 armor? Kind of exactly how you'd imagine. The higher the tier, the better the stats overall, as indicated by this in-game screenshot. Remember, all numbers may be subject to change. In addition to better stats on your gear, starting at, I believe, armor tier 4, your armor energy cap will get raised up from 10 to 11. That might sound like a minor benefit, but just think about how many times you've wanted to put on another stronger armor mod that just costed a little bit too much energy. With tier 4 and tier 5 armor, you'll be able to cram that bad boy in and hopefully make your build a little bit better. Tier 5 armor will also allow you to insert a tuning mod into your armor. This is kind of reminiscent of how Artifice armor mods work right now. It's like a free space on your armor that doesn't cost anything. A balanced tuning mod will slightly increase the 3 lowest stats on your armor, while other tuning mods will allow you to raise one stat while lowering another. If you're wondering why only one stat in particular can get raised, as shown here, well, check that tiny little symbol down by my armor stats. What do those 3 tiny lines mean? That would be my armor's tuning socket stat. It is determined by RNG when your armor drops, and those 3 little lines indicate what your arm's socket stat will be out of all 6 options. And by the way, yes, armor stats have changed, as you've noticed. Good eye. More on that a little bit later. For right now, why don't we answer a simple question. Now that we know the difference between tier 1 gear and tier 5 gear, how the hell do we get tier 5 gear to begin with? You can actually get it from a lot of different sources, but the ultra short version is harder/more challenging activities equals higher tier gear. And the good news is, with a lot of activities in Edge of Fate, you have the ability to directly F around with and adjust the difficulty level of what you're doing thanks to customizable challenge modifiers. Check it out. From the new portal screen, I head down over to the Fire Team option and click open the Devil's Lair mission option out of all the options I have available. I hover over the reward package and see that based on the current difficulty modifier, I'm looking at a tier 2 reward at the end of the mission. See how the engram has 2 diamonds on it? That means that would be a tier 2 reward. We can change that if we want though. I hit the customize button and now I'm able to go through and select custom modifiers. Take note that at the current moment indicated in the top right corner, the difficulty of this mission is normal, aka my current power level is 300 and the enemy combatant power level is also 300, and our reward again will be tier 2 gear. I then add a Bane modifier, Rage and Caltrips, meaning not only will those Banes appear on some enemies in the mission, but it also comes with a little plus 20 number on the modifier. Now look in the top right corner. The difficulty is now hard, and that plus 20 from the modifier has added on to the enemy combatant power. I'll now be doing the mission 20 under the power level of my enemies, so it'll be tougher, but look in the bottom right corner now. Now our reward for completing this activity will be a tier 3 reward. I go ahead and add on a difficult arc threat modifier, aka arc damage to guardians will go up by 50%. I've now raised the combatant power to 340 overall, so I'll be 40 power levels beneath my enemy, and the difficulty has gone up to very hard. But look, now our primary reward will be tier 4 gear. But what about tier 5 gear, you wonder? Tier 5 gear will be unlocked at even higher tier levels of play. If you look over on the left, you'll see our available levels of playable difficulty. The highest tier we were able to play while in the Bungie playtest area was Master, aka 300 combatant power, which you can ramp up a bit if you want, like every other level of difficulty. In order to unlock the next difficulty tier though, you have to complete a challenge of some kind that Bungie called conquests. These were not something that we were able to experience or try out, so your guess is as good as mine as to what the details of those might entail. But yeah, unlocking them and completing that challenge will allow you to step up a tier, and as mentioned, the higher tier the difficulty, the higher the tier of rewards you are able to earn. Tier 5 gear specifically, I believe you'll be able to unlock at the high end of Grandmaster tier, aka selecting the Grandmaster difficulty and then really cranking up the dial on enemy power and modifiers. And on that note, why don't we talk a little bit about power level. Power level is changing in Edge of Fate. In July, your Guardian's gear power is going to be reset to, I believe, 10, and your first major challenge will be hitting the persistent power cap of 200, which is kind of the new standard power cap for gear. As the game tells you, you'll be able to increase your power beyond 200 by obtaining new gear with seasonal bonus power. You can earn higher seasonal bonus power by playing harder activities. You know, kind of like the stuff I just showed you. Ramp up the difficulty for a mission, activity, whatever, and you'll get gear with seasonal bonus power. This begs the question though, well, if new gear can drop with seasonal bonus power, what about my old gear? I don't have any footage of this to show you, but this was something discussed in one of our meetings. Apologies because I'm going off pure memory here. We obviously weren't allowed to bring the Bungie dev presentations home. But in short, apparently there will be a way for us to infuse our old gear above power level 200 and get into seasonal power. I believe we're getting a new currency called an unstable core, and that is how you'll be able to accomplish this. So the good news is, if you've got old God roll armor that you're just really fond of, you will be able to infuse that up above power level 200 if you wish, but it will cost you. One downside though is that, as the game tells us, seasonal bonus power expires at the end of the season, meaning when the season is over, your old God roll armor, along with every other new God roll you've farmed during Edge of Fate, will revert back to 200 power, kind of like Cinderella's carriage morphing back into a pumpkin at midnight. That doesn't mean it'll be bad forever though. You'll likely be able to infuse it up again next season with more unstable cores. It seems like this is part one of Bungie's goal of incentivizing players to chase after new gear. Your old gear will absolutely be able to hang if you infuse it up, but you'll have to do it every season because when the clock hits 12, boom, pumpkin. Part 2 of Bungie's goal of incentivizing players to chase after new gear is to make you deadlier when you're rocking new gear. Check it out. If you hover over the artifact in-game, it'll tell you for every piece of new armor you're wearing, you gain bonus damage resistance. In the build we were playing, the extra DR went all the way up to plus 15%, aka 3% per armor piece. But again, those numbers may be subject to change. Also, using new weapons will result in a straight up damage buff. For example, equipping a new heavy weapon from that season gives me a plus 15% stronger outgoing power weapon damage. Same thing for equipping a new kinetic weapon or a new energy weapon. This is a really interesting tactic that I'm not entirely sure how the community will react to. On one hand, old gear won't become worthless, it'll still be able to hang in new seasons of content, which is good. On the other hand, getting free damage reduction and extra damage output is pretty goddamn tempting for higher end content like dungeons and raids. I think if the number were any higher than 15%, like if new gear gave your weapons, I don't know, 25 or 30% extra damage, yeah, you'd basically be an idiot for not running new gear. But I think 15 or maybe even 10% might be hovering around the just right territory. I can still bring old god rolls and they do fine. You're literally high if you think I'm going to dismantle my adept Lotus Eater, for example, but you still have that extra incentive to chase new gear as well. It definitely helps solve the problem of going into a new season, looking at all the new weapons and armor on the table and going, they're all trash. I ain't going after any of that because now they all come with a baked-in bonus. But yeah, your old armor and weapons aren't going anywhere. You'll still be able to use them if you want. It's just your old weapons won't get the same level of enhanceability that new tier 5 weapons are capable of getting. Your old armor won't be able to hit 11 energy or roll with set bonuses, which are a thing in Edge of Fate and are kind of awesome. Wearing your old gear won't give you a bit of free extra DR, and rocking old weapons won't give you free extra damage output. So yeah, with all this info, I definitely may go into my vault and do not a total purge, but I may be cleaning a fair amount, especially PvE focused stuff. One more thing to mention about gear changing. Class armor is now getting actual stats in Edge of Fate, yay. And as we mentioned earlier, the armor stats are not the same. Mobility, resilience, and recovery are no longer a thing. We now have health, melee, grenade, super, class, and weapons. Take note that getting these stats above level 100 will yield enhanced benefits, which is really interesting. At least it is to me. But yeah, class armor will now have stats going forward. And if you're thinking, oh god, does that mean I have to regrind all my exotic class armor rolls? I will literally throw my PS4 out a goddamn window right this second. Thankfully, no. Exotic class armor in particular is retroactively getting stats baked into them, apparently based on what perk combos you have on that armor. Okay, one final thing to talk about with armor, and that is armor archetype. New armor in Edge of Fate will now have an armor archetype associated with it, and I believe there are 6 archetypes in total: Paragon, Bulwark, Brawler, Gunner, Specialist, and Grenadier. Each archetype has a primary and secondary stat associated with it. For example, Paragon has a primary stat in Super and a secondary stat in Melee. As you can see, this armor has a third stat bar, and I believe that whatever the third stat bar is determined by RNG when you acquire the armor. Exotic armor from your collections, and I believe all your currently held exotic armor, will be updated to fall under the category of one of those previously mentioned armor archetypes. I think Bungie said they tried to do whatever just seemed right for the armor. For example, Titan Syntheseps are a very melee-focused exotic, so naturally they will fall under the Brawler archetype, which you can see from collections. But what if you wanted exotic armor to be a different archetype than whatever Bungie assigned it? Well, I believe your exotic armor drops will have different archetypes when acquired out in the wild. You can also adjust mods on your Ghost to ensure that your armor is more likely to drop with a particular armor archetype. And on top of that, you can talk to Ada 1 and pick up something called Exotic Requisition Orders. These will allow you to focus any piece of exotic armor with the exact armor archetype that you want. I know that was all kind of a huge info dump, but I hope I explained it in a way that kind of made sense. In short though, I wouldn't go about deleting your entire vault. Top shelf god rolls will still undoubtedly perform well in Edge of Fate, and your god roll armor should be infusible and usable if you wish. That being said, new gear comes with inherent bonuses, which are definitely something to keep in mind because they are very good. Ring the notification bell because I have more videos coming out on Edge of Fate this week with new info and new footage. Thank you very much for watching. Peace!